Testing. Testing. Okay. All right. Let's get this going. Darren's only got this is only an hour session, right?
Yeah.
So we got to run fast and furious. Welcome. This is the MicroStation Connect session, and the presenter will be Darren Bunker. Should be familiar to a lot of you. He used to work for UDOT, and then he bailed on us as soon as we launched ProjectWise. So I don't know if he's just evil or smart by getting out, because I had to take over the ProjectWise, and now Gary gets to take it over. And so Darren has worked for Bentley Systems for a year and a half. I thought it was longer than that. Before that, he was a consultant in the Denver area, helping the CDOT, and he's back in helping us with our training and our integration of OpenRoads and anything with Bentley products. Darren will be presenting that today. MicroStation Connect, it's the next version of MicroStation. It has, I don't want to take, it has released, for those in UDOT, it's available on the M drive to install. So after this presentation, you get back to the office, you want to play with it. We have not implemented it at UDOT yet. We have to wait for inroads and the third-party applications to be integrated before we switch over. But it's such a drastic change and improvement to MicroStation that we wanted to get it presented here to get the initial shock off. There are a lot of capabilities in this MicroStation that Darren will show you. And so we'll turn the time to Darren. I'll be passing around some sign-up sheets. If you're from the out of the state and you need some credit, this is a engineering credit class. You receive accreditation on that. And Darren is a professional licensed engineer. Are you still in Utah and Colorado?
Utah, Colorado.
For Utah and Colorado, so he's able to present and give credit. So there's forms up here if you're from out of state. You can fill that out, and we'll have Darren sign it at the end of the session. So we'll turn the time to Darren.
All right. Mic's on. That's good. Well, as I'm looking out the audience, this seems like a different audience than I had last year. Last year, there were quite a few familiar faces. I don't see as many familiar faces as I did last year here today. But I was talking to a former colleague that I knew when I was working at UDOT, and I was just telling her how fun it was to come back here each year and kind of rub elbows with those who I'd worked for and with for 13 years. And she said that, yeah, it's kind of like a UDOT Thanksgiving where the whole family gets together. Some people you know, some people are long-lost family members that finally show up again. So I thought that was an appropriate analogy, UDOT Thanksgiving. And what do we do at Thanksgiving? Well, we connect with each other, right? And so really that's what this next generation of Bentley products is all about, is about making connections. And so this morning, or in this session, we'll talk about MicroStation Connect. This afternoon, I'll be doing another session on OpenRoads Mobile, which is also part of the Connect family. And then tomorrow, I'll be doing another presentation on ProjectWise Connect. The Connect environment is all about connecting users and projects and teams, okay? And so one of the very first things you're going to notice about MicroStation Connect is you will have to have a Connect login. If you already have a login to any of the select services features that Bentley provides, you will use that same login to log into the Connect environment. And so basically, this is what you will get. And you can access this connection client. When you install MicroStation Connect, it will require you to install this client as well. And so you just put in your credentials there and you say sign in. Okay? And that's really all there is to the connection client. And what the connection client actually does, it's significant in that it tracks things that you're working on, projects you're working on. It looks at the applications you're working with, and then it is able to go ahead and provide information back on a user-by-user basis on what training is available to you from Bentley and what resources are available based on the projects and project types that you're working on. The Connect client also manages the licensing. It's the licensing mechanism. So we'll be going away from, I believe, Select Server to this connection client. Okay? Connect is definitely a paradigm shift. If any of you have ever done surveying, which I did 20 years ago, where you take a plumb bob and a metal tape to do your surveying, and then you move from that type of technology to a total station, that's the kind of change we're talking about here, okay? And let's see here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to pull up MicroStation. And so this is what you see when you load MicroStation. You know what? I've lost here some. Let me resize this real quick because I got to get to some of this stuff. Okay. All right, so this is what we call the welcome screen in MicroStation. And this is where all of those resources that I was talking about, those personalized resources, show up. On the left-hand side, it'll provide some examples. So if you need something to kind of get you off dead center and get your brain thinking in terms of what MicroStation can do for you, there's some examples on the left. In the middle, you have suggested learning courses that you can take. Click the More Training button, and it'll take you out to your personal profile on the Select server. Okay, you've got all your social media buttons down here, and you've got a news feed. Bentley has recently acquired several packages that relate to preliminary design, and so we've got news feeds out there, and you can simply click on these links. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can click on those links, and it'll take you to more explanation about what Bentley is doing and how it impacts you. Okay, so that's the welcome screen. In the upper right-hand corner is where you will see your profile, and here you can go to your personal portal. That's a website, part of the Connect environment, and it has even more information for you out on your personal portal, and you can log out here as well. And right up here is the help icon, just so you know where that is. Okay? So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to click this right arrow, and this is what going to take us to basically our workstation environment. And I'm going to quickly remove these things. We'll come back to those. Okay, and one of the first things that we need to introduce you to is this idea of workspaces. Real quick, is there anybody in here that can tell me the 5 levels of configuration in the current MicroStation environment? Besides Bob. You got it, Paul? Okay. They are, I got to read my screen to remember them, system, application, let's see, what's the next one? Standards, project, and user. Okay? Those are your 5 levels of configuration. Now, in project-wise, if you're using project-wise, there's 3 additional ones. We won't go into those. But this screen right here is basically replacing the bottom right-hand corner of your MicroStation window where you choose your user and your project, okay? What we have here is we have a thing called workspaces and work sets. You can think of the workspace area as a replacement to your company's standards. So if you've developed cell libraries, DGN libraries, anything like that, that are company-wide or project type-wide or client-wide, then that's going to be contained in the new workspace. The work set, which is this category, basically you can think of that as your project configuration. Okay, so if there are any configurations that supersede your corporate standards at a project level, then those would be set in the work set. It also defines the location for your project, the folder structure and all that. Okay? Now, you can actually start a file, open a file with no workspace and no work set defined. Okay? And let me do that. I'm going to hit browse and come down here. Let me see if I can find that file. I got to go back up here. Anyway, let me, I'll just open a file from here. Okay, so I'm opening up a file, and it's telling me that this file is already associated with a workspace and a work set. And I'm trying to open up with no work set. So I'm given an option on what to do with this work set, okay? And this is called branding. So when you open up a file that does not have a workspace or a work set with it, you choose one, that's called branding. And then from that point on, that file will use that workspace and work set combination for its resources. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this example workspace and go to my MetroStation work set and go in here and the master DGN file. All right, so now we've actually entered into a file, okay? And you can see that this interface is completely different than your current MicroStation environment, okay? We have incorporated a ribbon type concept, and there's many reasons for going to the ribbon interface versus the interface we had before. One of those reasons is to facilitate the use of certain applications. It actually really does help in the learning process, and you'll kind of see how that functions a little bit later. You can find the right tool a lot faster because there's a search bar in here where you can find tools rather than having to click and peck through the different places on the ribbon. And we also have workflows in here. And thus, with all these benefits, it actually lowers your training threshold, okay? So in the past, there might have been large learning curves, and with MicroStation Connect, we're gonna lower that learning curve, okay? The first thing we're gonna look at in terms of this interface is we're gonna click on the File menu, or the File tab. These are called ribbon tabs across here, and these are called ribbon groups. We're gonna click on the File tab. And this takes us to what we call the backstage, okay? So this is an area, if you're used to going to the configuration preferences dialog box in MicroStation, this is where you would actually go to access that information now, okay? So if you want to save a file, obviously your shortcuts, Control-S, that kind of thing, those still work, but if you want to click on a Save button, you would find that here. Save settings. Which is where you save how your view dialogues are set up. That command is in here. Control F still works with that as well, so you don't have to come in here to do that. But importantly, we have the settings down here. And we'll come back to some of these, but you can see that this is where you would define your function keys. These are user specific. The things that you change in here would go into a user-specific DGN library, okay? And so that would follow you. That's part of the Connect environment, is that this DGN library would now be part of how you as an individual work, right? So if you move from location to location, then these settings would follow you, okay? If we click on Properties, this Properties dialog box comes up. And this properties dialog box basically replaces the element information dialog box. Element information used to be solely for the purpose of finding information on the elements in your design file. But now this dialog box has expanded its capabilities, and you can actually get information on anything within the Connect environment, okay? And so in this case, we're actually looking at the properties of the file itself, okay? Over here, for example, under extended, you could add some metadata, okay? Bob's my boss. So we can type in metadata here, and that will go with the file. All right. Now, you notice that when I clicked on the properties dialog, it took me back to the actual design file, okay? So it got me out of the Backstage environment and put me back into the file. And I'm going to go back to the Backstage. There's a couple ways you can get out of the Backstage. You can click on this left arrow here, or you can simply hit the Escape key, and it will take you back to the drawing. The Escape key, I believe that it's set by default when you start up a Connect session, but if not, there is a variable, there is a setting under User Settings where you can set what the Escape key does. Okay. This piece right up here is called the workflow, okay, dialog. And you can set up customized workflows for how you do your business. I'm just going to kind of toggle through these, and I want you to pay attention to what happens to both the ribbon tabs and the ribbon groups. Okay, so right now I'm in the drawing one. If I change that to task navigation, you can see that the number of tabs that are available are reduced, and the groups have also changed. Okay, so that's the workflow. You can customize those to fit a specific process, maybe placing landscape cells and generating reports from those cells that have been placed. Okay. Yes, numbers in terms of shortcuts, is that what you're talking about? Okay, if you press the F2 key, it will show you what those numbers are for the quick access bar and the tabs and the workflow. And if you press F3, it will show you what the tools are, the shortcuts are for the actual tools themselves. This is called the quick access toolbar right through here. This is customizable, but basically these are items that you want to have readily accessible even if you change your workflow, because as we showed, if you change your workflow, your tabs and your groups are going to change. But the quick access bar, these icons are static, but they are customizable. Currently we have your regular save functions, undo, redo, and open. Okay. Over here we have a search bar, okay? And this is where it becomes really powerful. Let's say I want to draw a line, okay? But I don't want to search all over the place for that tool. I can simply type in the word line, okay? The cool thing about this is it'll give me all the different types of line tools that I can use, but down at the bottom you'll notice it has a section for Backstage. So there are some items in the Backstage related to lines as well. For example, the line style editor, okay? If I click on any one of these, it actually activates that tool. Okay, so if I come here, it's actually going to pull up that command, okay? So that is the ribbon search, okay? To preserve real estate, we do have a minimize maximize button right here. So you can get rid of the ribbon and return it. If you click the space bar, then you will have access to a bunch of tools as well, tool pop-ups. This is customizable. It does have a limited number of icons that you can put in here, so you want to choose the ones that impact your workflow the most. So that is called ribbon, these display ribbon groups, okay? Then if you press Q, it'll bring up your groups. So see attributes, primary, main. Basically, you're getting the same groups down here, okay, along with their shortcut key. So you've got the space bar, you've got Q, and then...
So if you're minimize the ribbon, the Q will bring your...
Exactly. So if you minimize your ribbon and you hit Q, you will still get that, okay? So it's just one of those ways of maximizing your real estate. And then, although you have your view commands up here, you can also access those commands by hitting Shift right click. And then that will be right at your cursor, right at your fingertips, and you're not having to move your mouse up to the top right of the view window in order to perform a view function. Okay? Now, another very exciting thing, if you're familiar with the OpenRoads environment for inroads, and there is an Explorer window in that package which allows you to navigate all the design elements in your file. MicroStation now has that same Explorer concept built into it. And it is found on the Home tab. Let me change this back to Drawing and go to the Home tab. And it's right here called Explorer. Showed up on my other screen. Okay, and you can move this around. If you hover over this little arrow right here, it will actually kind of dock it over on the left-hand side. If I do this, is it gonna? It messes me up, doesn't it? All right, and so this is the Explorer here. And it's natively, it has files, items, resources, sheet indexes, and links, okay, in it. And it can be customized as well, so you don't have to see all these things. Once again, if you go over to the File and Settings and User, there's a bunch of Explorer settings that you can modify and tell which of those items you want to display and not display. This is kind of docked over on the left-hand side, but you can also pin it. And I don't know if you know what we mean by pin, but so I'll demonstrate that. If you click the little pin button, you'll see that it slides kind of over onto the left-hand side. And so we're talking about right up here, and if you hover over it, then it will expand, okay? So you can always have it there without it taking up too much real estate. If you're working with it quite a bit, then you may want to unpin it so that it's always docked and visible. Okay. This Explorer, you can actually do a search in it as well to find certain items under the items category. So real quick here, I'm just going to type in the word border. I'm in the wrong. Let me close out this file and get in a different file. I'm going to change my, actually close that file. And I'm going to change my workspace. And go down here to Survey Topo 2. Once again, this is asking me, it's not associated with a workspace or workset yet, so I'm going to brand it so that it always knows to use that it will be associated with this particular project and standards. And then I'm going to go back down in here and type in border. And that's what happens when you do live demos. Okay. But basically what would have happened is it would have gone and found any line styles or reference files or anything else that had the word border in it. Okay? So that's what the search function does. Oh, here we go. Let me open up one more file and try it again. And while I'm here, let me explain this. So as you begin to open up files, right, through the Browse button, you will see them starting to be added here in this listing. Okay, so once you go into a file, you won't have to hit the Browse button. It'll be right there. One of the things you can do, once again, is you can pin this, okay? And so what that will do is it will always have that available. So even if you refresh, as your recent list begins to scroll and to kind of have files drop off the end, because it only has a limited number of recent files that it can handle, then if you pin it, then that particular file will always be accessible. Let me go down here. Landscape 4. Now let me see if this will work. There we go. Oh, 0 results, okay? But once you perform a search, this is what happens. It creates as a search folder, and so then you don't have to perform the search. Basically, you can come down here and just double click on that, and it will show you the results of your search. Okay. And this search can actually get pretty sophisticated. If you click on this button right here, then you can actually do very sophisticated searches using your if and or statements, okay, to narrow down exactly what you're looking for. All right, how are we on time? Okay, so we're going to landscape 4. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about a thing called property-driven annotation, okay? And what this will do is we're going to actually associate properties of an element to the annotation itself, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to change our ground cover, and you'll notice there's a search in here too. So if you've got a long list of levels, you can actually, and annotation's right there at the top, but I'm just going to show you what it does, okay? If I start typing in annotation, then you will see that that level list begins to narrow based on the text that you've typed into the search window for your levels, okay? So we'll set our level to annotation, and then we're going to go into our place text tool, which is under the annotate tab, and we're going to place some text. And this will open up our text editor, okay? What we've added in here is the ability to actually add fields to your text. So I'm going to click on this, and you can choose out of different, where the fields are coming from. In this case, we're going to choose an element property and say, okay. Oops. Element property, okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select this tree right here. And I'm going to kind of hover over this, and you're going to see a pop-up that explains exactly what this element is. So this is what I want, because there's some shrubbery around there too, so I have to make sure I get the right thing. Okay, so it's going to zoom into it, and then it's going to bring up the Fields Editor dialog box. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to go to Items and Tree Plantings, okay, and we want to be able to place a field corresponding to the item number of that particular thing that we've placed. So I'm going to click on item number, okay, and I'm going to click on the OK button. So now you see that the item number, the actual item number, not just the field name, but the item number of that element that I selected is placed in my field here, okay? I'm going to do this a couple more times. We're going to click OK. And we're going to go get the common name. And we're going to get the botanical name. Let's see, control. What did I do wrong here? I didn't put an enter there. Let me do that one more time. All right, so now as I go out here, I guess I need to change this too, to let's see, what one was it? That guy. Now you can see as I go to place the text, okay, it's placing the element information for that element that I chose, okay? So I'm just going to click that right here. Now, so that you don't have to do that every time you place an element, so you don't have to go into the text box and add these, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a label cell out of this information, okay? So what we're going to do for that is we're going to go to our cell dialog here, and we are going to go to the more, let's see where, if I can find this now, and we're going to define a cell origin, okay? We're going to define an origin right there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually select this text here. Okay? And from there, what we can do is we can go to our, let's see, our place cell command. Is this? No, that's not it. Where is it? Create cells. Oh, right here. Many of these dialog boxes have a arrow down at the bottom right-hand corner, and when you click on those, it actually brings up the dialog boxes that are associated with placing the cell. And I need to make sure that I have got the cell origin and the item selected. So in this case, I'm going to hit New Cell, and I'm going to call this Landscape Label. And so this is for trees, shrubs, and plants. Okay? And we'll create that. So there's my landscape label. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place a label. Okay? I'm going to select the cell. I'm going to select that landscape label that I just created. Okay? And basically, this is a label without a leader, and this is a label with a leader. So we're going to choose label with a leader, and we're going to leave the dimension style as label. And now what I do is, the first thing I do is I place the label where I want it to be, and then I snap to the element, okay? You can see this kind of snap, and you can see that this is ground cover, right? And so I'm going to snap to it, and I'm going to zoom out, and now you can see that it used those same fields that I defined in that label to actually grab the properties from that cell. Okay? Now, let me show you how dynamic this is. If I actually click on the cell and go to its properties, we're back in that properties dialog box again. One of the things you'll notice down here is a element type for ground cover planting. Okay? So if I come down here and I change the botanical name, oops. To Darren's favorite, then what you will see in the label is the change to that text, okay? And so basically what you can do is you can set up these annotation labels with what you want to define, and then a little bit later we're going to talk about element templates, and you set the element templates up for that specific cell that you're placing, and it will always come in with the right text, okay? And if you happen to update that information, it'll update your annotation automatically. Okay? And so if I zoom out here and come down, let's see here.
Make it so the leader doesn't go through your text.
Oh, did it?
He had chosen to place the cell first and then the leader. He had chosen
Yeah.
the item and then the cell. It was-
And that leader, understand, one of the options I had was the dimension style, okay? That leader is going to be associated with that dimension style, how that leader comes in, okay? And so I'm guessing that, I haven't gotten into the details of the configuration here, but my guess is the leader is probably attached to the top left of the annotation, whereas sometimes you can just change that to dynamic, okay? So that'll be a dimension style issue. But let me go ahead and do that one more time. So I'm going to place a label, but this time I'm going to come here.
Change your start at.
Oh, change my start at. Place
Right now,
label,
Start at cell.
start at
Terminator.
Terminator.
This time you'll select the element and then
Okay,
then you can make sure.
and then you can kind of make changes. But once again,
Still attached.
it's still attached to the dimension style, okay, which is this guy right here, okay? But now you can see that it's actually picking up the attributes of that other cell that I grabbed, okay? If I come over here, I can do the same thing, okay? And you can see that it has properly identified that element. So it doesn't have to be a cell per se. It can actually be a line or any other type of element in your drawing. Okay, what time does this get done? We got about 20 minutes? Do I have 20 minutes? Okay. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to open up another file. This time I'm going to open up the Topo3 file. Is that even in here? There it is. Okay, same thing. I'm going to brand that file. Okay, so the other thing that happens here is we now have the ability to associate hatching with your annotation scale. Okay, so I'm going to go into here under, got to remember where that's at, Utilities tab. And right here under Annotation Scale, I'm going to do a custom scale of 600 to 1. All these scales are messed up, and you're going to be using your standard scales, so you're not going to have to go in here and type this stuff in. This is just specifically for this demo. All the standards that you have set right now for your workspace are going to work here in Connect as well. Okay, so our annotation scale is set to 600 to 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to annotate, and we're going to go to our hatching command. Okay. And we're going to make sure that our annotation lock is on. And we're going to change the spacing to 1/4 inch, which is :.25. Okay. And then we're going to select this item right here. Okay. And if we zoom in, it's pretty tight, but you can see that. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and we're going to actually, you know what, I wanted to. That we're going to change this spacing to :.5, and we're going to click on this one. So these should have, the spacing should be different on both of these. It's a little hard to see.
Darren,
Yeah,
on your cell label, where you can like customize all your cell labeling,
mm-hmm.
and then once you got it set up, you click on the different cells and it knows what to label.
Correct.
Can you mass select and have it spit out all your labels?
Oh, good question. I don't know the answer to that. And so if you'll get back with me, I'll get an answer to you. Okay?
With the place, you talking about using the place label?
Yeah.
It's hard to have it spit out all those, and you're choosing one location. Your arrows and terminators wouldn't work. But there is a capability of creating a spreadsheet from these tables, those element informations. So you can use the item sets to create that. That's one of the things that's powerful about it.
And my guess is, you know, it's probably going to be associated with creating like a macro or something like that, where the macro will go into your file and look for all the cells with particular criteria, and then just label all those. I'm guessing you could do that, but I don't want to promise that. I need to dig into that a little bit deeper. But I would imagine that that's how you would do that. All right, so we have a different spacing on this building versus this building. Okay. Let's see, what am I doing here? Now what I'm going to do, let me just zoom in here so you can see the lines here. I'm going to actually go back to my analyze. Was it analyze? Utilities, sorry. I'm going to look at my custom scale, and we're going to change this to 1200 to 1. And that should have changed. Was that, I'm wondering if that was, I'm going to delete this hatch area and try it again. My annotation lock is on. Okay. And so let's go back to utilities and change this back to that. Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay. So let me just play around with this, and you'll see it change dynamically. Okay, so as I change my annotation scale, my hatching pattern changes as well. Okay, because that hatch pattern is now associated with the annotation scale. So what that means is you can actually create your hatch pattern here in this file, and then when you reference the survey topo file into a master drawing, okay, it's still going to use the annotation scale of that master drawing to adjust the hatching, so that you get the right spacing for the scale at which you're printing your plan set. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over a concept called display rules. So I'm going to open up another file. Actually, did I already open it up? Yeah, we're going to open up this file. Okay. And display rules are practical for making the graphics look different based on the usage that those graphics are purposed for. For example, even if I create all my graphics on the right levels with the right attributes and properties, somebody may want to use those elements for a different purpose, okay? So for example, construction sequencing. So you've got all your lines and curb and gutter and all that defined in here. If there are criteria that you can identify for those elements that would isolate them for specific phasings, then you can create a display rule for phasing and kind of grayscale everything out except for those elements that are part of that phase, without having to actually go in and change the properties of those elements themselves. Okay, so that's what display rules can do for you. And so we're going to go in here and go into the View Attributes tab or dialog. Okay, and display rules are view dependent. So each one of the views in MicroStation 1 through 8 can have a different display rule. You get to the display rules by this epsilon, these epsilon icons right here. Okay. Right now, I have a display rule called all shrubs. I'm going to change this to none, and so you can observe what happens on the screen. Okay. You see how all of this is now basically how it was put in. It was put on, these elements were put in on the right levels, colors, had everything correctly identified on them when they were put into this file. Okay, but now I want to isolate all my shrubs, okay? Because I'm going to create a plan set for the landscape people to say this is where all the shrubs go, so that he doesn't have to kind of muddle through all of this and try and figure out where they are. So if I simply toggle on all shrubs, then it's going to grayscale everything back, change the transparency on them, and highlight the shrubs in red. So now the landscape guy easily can identify where he's got to do his work, okay? I'm going to change this to all trees, okay? And that's where they are. When you click on the, this is the toggle to actually go and configure what the display rules are, okay? And real quick, the order of these display rules does impact what you see. So real quick, I'm just going to highlight this first display rule, and I'm actually going to put it at the bottom and kind of pay attention to the screen and see what happens. Okay? Everything's grayed out simply because of the order in which I defined the grayscale item. Okay? It starts at the top and works itself down, basically. So if I move that criteria back up, then we find that. And these display rules can actually get fairly sophisticated as well. Let me show you this one called smaller mower required. Okay, so these are areas where you're not going to actually be able to use a commercial mowing machine. You're going to have a hand mower out there. Okay, and so how did it identify these areas? This is actually a more sophisticated criteria. Let's see, where are they? If you click on the condition, then it brings up the condition editor, okay? So in this case, it's basically going out, looking for any shape that's a circle, an ellipse, or a complex area that is less than 30,000 square feet. Okay? So you can put Boolean criteria in these display rules as well. So hopefully that kind of triggers some thoughts about how you can use display rules in your workflow process so that you're not having to recreate data that's already existing. You can just simply use display rules to communicate a different intent.
Just thinking of a quick way is QC. If you have tags on elements that need to be fixed, that have been resolved, you can display rule and see what still needs to be worked on, what doesn't. So different attributes you can assign to elements.
Yeah, that's a great example. What needs to be fixed, what has been fixed. Okay? Now, this next item, I actually had some issues working with the data set that I was provided. So we're actually going to watch a little movie if you don't mind. But it's such a significant concept that I think watching the video is worth your time. And it has to do with creating sheets. A large part of the production process is sheet creation, right? And if you're familiar with the En-ROADS plan and profile generator, this concept will actually seem familiar to you because it kind of draws on those same, that same programming concept, and now they've got it in MicroStation. So I'm going to find that real quick. Oh, let's see here. And
rectangular array method. Adjust the extent and
can you guys hear
position
that?
of a name boundary. Generate a new sheet model that contains the content of a name boundary. Work with reports to create a custom-tailored index sheet. Format and place a drawing sheet index as a table, and print sheets in a sheet index. Sheet indexing. A sheet index is a centralized and structured collection of sheets within your project. A sheet index can be useful in creating a construction document set, also referred to as a sheet set or construction set, that contains all of the sheets within your project. You may link any sheet model from any design file of your project into a sheet index. Sheet numbering rules enable you to define rules to generate sheet numbers for all sheets in the sheet index. Sheets can be organized hierarchically in folders, with the ability to override sheet numbering rules for sheets in each folder. Custom properties can be attached to sheets and placed as text fields in the sheet. Custom properties can also be attached to the folders and the sheet index. The sheet index is managed from the Explorer dialog Sheet Index tab. Being a name boundary and placing the content section, we will learn to create name. Start the MicroStation Connect. Verify that you're set to the drawing work ground floor plan. Verify that you're set to the drawing workflow and the Home tab. From Attributes, make your active level A7017-G-BND. This is the level that we're going to use to place our drawing boundaries. Next, let's go ahead and click the View tab. The View tab is where you will locate the Place Name Boundary tool. Let's go ahead and select Place Named Boundary. In the Tool Settings window, let's go ahead and set the method to by 2 points. In the name field, we're going to type in Staircase A. The description is optional. You can leave that blank. Verify that you're placing a single name boundary and enable the Create Drawing. You'll be prompted to enter your first point. Place your first point just outside of the area illustrated here where the stairwell is located at. When you do, a boundary will be attached to your cursor. Place that boundary big enough to encompass the entire stairwell. This is my second point location. From there, you can now orient this as you desire, with the red axis being the positive X direction as to how this detail will be laid out on the sheet that we're creating. Go ahead and assign that so that it's pointed straight across to the right. Give it a data point. We've now defined the size and the orientation, and we need to accept this to go ahead and create the name boundary. Anywhere within the MicroStation view window, place a data point. The Create Drawing dialog is opened. Here we're going to go ahead and set the following information. The name is Staircase A. We're going to go ahead and select the drawing seed as Detail 2D Sheet Only. In the section for sheet models, verify that Create Sheet Model is enabled. We can then browse to or create a new file. Click the Browse Sheet file and select BSI 300-Sheets from the folder. Go ahead and click
This is
Open.
basically the
We're
file
going
that
to leave this
contains
as a
all the
new sheet
sheets.
with it set to full size 1:1 for the annotation scale. The drawing boundary is also new, with the detail scale being set of 1:50. You can leave Add to Sheet Index disabled and verify that Open Sheet Model is toggled on. From here, go ahead and click OK to produce the name boundary. The newly created sheet model will be opened with the name boundary referenced to the sheet. We can see this if we proceed to the Home tab and select the Models icon. In Models, click Staircase A to highlight the model's name.
I'm going to fast
We're
forward
going to
just a
go
little
ahead and
bit due to
rename the
time.
model. Double-click on Index to see its content. Here we're going to go ahead and select the folder 400-Enlarged Sections.
So basically right here, we are in the Explorer window, again, under the Sheet Index category, and you can categorize these to whatever folders you want. You can create naming conventions for those sheets. That naming convention will then, or can be tied to your page number. How many times have you struggled with page numbers and having to renumber those pages? Okay, as you put these things in order within this folder structure, then it will automatically update your page numbers based on where you put these sheets, okay? And so basically the rest of that demo was just going to show how initially when you didn't toggle on Add to Sheet Index, you can right-click on one of these folders and add a sheet model to this index, okay? This sheet index is also tied to Interplot Explorer, so when you open up Interplot Explorer, it will automatically synchronize with this sheet index, okay? And you can actually produce a physical print set of the things that are in your model.
Can you reverse flow it, like from here you realize, oh, I needed a little bit more on the bottom right. Can you stretch it here and reflect back? Does it go two ways, or do you have?
Oh, in terms of what you captured?
Yeah, or maybe even the rotation that you have.
Yeah, all that's happening there is you're defining a sheet boundary, a named boundary, right? So you can go back to where you define that name boundary and adjust the name boundary, and it will automatically adjust everything that it is referenced to.
What I was asking is, can you adjust it here, or is it only a one-way flow is what you're saying? You can't.
That I don't know the answer to that.
Stretch it here is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
You could probably toggle on that you're editing a reference file in here and do that here.
Yeah.
So that capability of modifying another file from within another file.
Yeah.
That should still be there with reference.
One more quick thing just to wrap this up. There are several more topics that we just did not have time to cover. As Bob mentioned at the beginning, we had to get going quite quickly because there's a lot of information here, but a lot of cool things. But in terms of sheet indexing, you can actually create name boundaries. In this example, we did it one sheet at a time, but you can actually do an array of sheets, or you can actually choose an element and create sheet boundary names along an alignment. And that's very similar to what I was talking about with the plan and profile generator in Inroads. So anyway, lots of exciting things. There are continuous improvements on this Connect edition. As Bob mentioned, this is our next generation. And so there's still a lot of work to do in development. And so kind of hold back from forcing Bob to create your resources for this environment. He's already overloaded with what he's doing already. But definitely go out and you've got access to it. So download it, get in there, hit that help button. There's lots of tutorials out there for this, but this kind of gives you a taste for what is to come. Thank you.